Well, if I had a lot of money and I was prepping for the end of manufacturing, i.e., the inevitable soon-to-come apocalypse, it's a little bit overwhelming, all of the things that you would need, but if you could just hijack Amazon, that'd be cool. I had this idea that Bezos is going to be, like, gassing his warehouses. Like, that's his shit, you know what I'm saying? But there's also some kind of feeling that maybe he does at the moment, because not anybody else is preparing for an apocalypse, right? Okay? Everybody else thinks everything's going along fine, as far as I can tell. He does stave off a lot of other sort of individual hoarding because he's totally the conglomerative, monopoly, like by far. But again, that doesn't mean that they can't open up their own factory and just make all their own shit real quick, right? In like a Gaza that's like, hey, we'll take jobs in exchange for not being bombed, right? Okay, so if I had a lot of money and I was preparing, I would go through it like a house and just like room by room by room, because you're gonna have to stockpile everything you need for like your whole future generations. And how many of your if you're reproducing, how many of you can be alive at one time? I watch these families with 10 kids and I do the math. It's, I don't know how they're so rich. They seem, like humble pie, but they're obviously wealthy enough to consider that each of their 10 kids are going to have 10 kids. And that each of those 10, whoever they marry, they could all come from families with 10 kids. And, like really quickly you get to like 1,000 people alive in your own, like that you're responsible for, like really quick, like potentially way more, but it ratchets up really quick. So anyway, so you would need like 1,000 bed frames, okay? You need like 1,000 mattresses, and isn't it cool that they come in these squashed little boxes right now, right? But then think about other things, like logically, like I know, like if you want coffee, not only do you need to have coffee beans to grow the coffee, but you also you're gonna need a way to roast it, but that's fine, you're gonna have a way to roast things. You're going to need a way to crush the beans, right? So you need some kind of mill, but that's okay because you're going to need mill for other things too. But you may not want to mix your coffee milling with like your wheat milling, but then it's like you don't necessarily need a sieve for coffee. You're going to have sieves for other things anyways, but it's like you don't necessarily need one for coffee, because I just brew it in my thermos here, and the way I pour it out, very little grounds comes out. I finally figured out a coffee brewing Occam's razor without a coffee pot, and I'm very proud of myself, thank you. And then the grounds just get flushed down the toilet. It's the easiest way.